Hello everyone and welcome to another Commander Tactics Deck Tech. My name's Pope. With the recent release of Theros Beyond Death, there have been a ton of new enchantments added into the format, many of which will become staples down the line. This got me excited to start rebuilding an Enchantress deck, but if you know the Commander Tactics way, we don't do things straightforward, so going with the expected Estrid or Kestia would have been a little too easy, and instead we're going to be building with the Man of Myth, Kenrith the Returned King. But Pope, Kenrith isn't an enchantment-centric commander? Oh, but I believe he is, and I will gladly explain why. Kenrith is a 5/5 legendary human noble costing 4 and a white that has 5 activated abilities, each correlating with a different one of the colors. For red, we can give all creatures haste and trample. For 1 and a green, we can put a +1 counter on a creature. For 2 and a white, we can give a player 5 life. For 3 and a blue, we can make a target player draw a card, and for 4 and a black, we can return a creature card from a graveyard to its owner's side of the battlefield. But now that we know exactly how our commander runs, let's take a look at the foundation of this deck. Number 1, this is going to be a Bant deck, so that's blue, white, and green. 61 of the 64 playable spells in this deck are Bant colors alone. Playing Kenrith allows us to use his abilities along with the hybrid mana in Bant colors. Number 2, the deck has many different alternatives to generating colors outside of Bant, such as Smothering Tithe, which will provide us treasures that can be sacked for any color. These extra colors will be used with Kenrith if needed to provide whatever ability is called for in any given situation. And number 3, Kenrith is a jack of all trades and can be on par or even more powerful than most other Enchantress-focused commanders, and this will open up the doors for new interactions that we wouldn't usually have available to us. Our core strategy of this deck, by no surprise, is going to be cast tons of enchantments, draw a boatload of cards, and do all sorts of shenanigans. And in order to make that happen, we're going to have a few core elements. Number 1, lots of enchantments. Number 2, lots of enchantment defenses. And number 3, we're going to have a bunch of additional support and enablers to help us reach our payoffs. And hidden in the mix, we have a few options as to how we're going to close games out and get that W. And the budget for this deck that we're going to be building comes in right around $150. But now, let's keep things moving along and take a look at some of the radical enchantments we're going to be jamming in order to overwhelm the board and take down our opponents. And let's kick things off with 3 enchantments that are going to help us ramp to cast our bigger, better spells later on with Wild Growth, Fertile Ground, and Trace of Abundance. Wild Growth, one of the best enchantments to help us ramp in all of the game, costing only 1 green. We enchant a land, and whenever that land is tapped for mana, we get to add an additional green to our mana pool. Super cheap, super efficient, and only 23 cents, just an amazing card. Fertile Ground, 1 and a green, we enchant a land, and whenever that land is tapped for mana, we can add 1 of any color to our mana pool. Fertile Ground makes us have access to all of Kenrith's abilities and any of the additional spells that we have that require mana outside of Bant. And Trace of Abundance for only 2 mana. Now you will notice there is a Boros mana and a green mana. The great thing about running Kenrith is that we now have options like Trace of Abundance since we technically have a 5-color commander. But this says enchant land. The enchanted land has Shroud, and whenever that land is tapped for mana, we get to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool. Just like Fertile Ground, but an additional copy of it, allowing us to do more thanks to our commander being the multiple colors. Next we have Smothering Tithe, Dryad of the Elysian Grove, and Cryptolith Rite. All 3 of these enchantments going to enable us to have the options for different colored mana as well. Smothering Tithe, whenever an opponent draws a card, they're going to have to pay 2. If they don't, we get a treasure token that we can sack for any color. Do keep in mind, Smothering Tithe is on the steady incline. This card's not getting cheaper anytime soon, so definitely pick one up while it's still under 10 bucks. Dryad of the Elysian Grove, straight from Theros Beyond Death. This enchantment says we can play an additional land on each of our turns, so land ramp on a creature. And lands we control are every basic type in addition to their other types. So this is going to give us access to all 5 colors and ramp, all for only 3 mana. An absolute bomb, great card. Cryptolith Rite, 1 and a green enchantment, going to give all of our creatures the ability to tap for any colored mana. An extremely helpful enchantment, especially because we are running a hefty package of creatures. Next up, we have 3 enchantments that are going to generate us some tokens: Sigil of the Empty Throne, Divine Visitation, and Sandworm Convergence. Sigil of the Empty Throne, going perfect in our enchantment deck, says whenever you cast an enchantment, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with flying. This is so amazing because we are going to be casting enchantments every turn, generating angels out of nowhere. Divine Visitation, 3, a white and a white, says if one or more creature tokens would be placed under your control on the field, that many 4/4 white angel creature tokens with flying and vigilance are created instead. Even though our token package is a little weak in this deck, just having that ability to make 4/4s instead of 1/1s, I had to include it. And Sandworm Convergence, costing 8 mana, 6 and double green. Creatures with flying can't attack you or planeswalkers you control, and at the beginning of your end step, you create a 5/5 green worm creature token. A little bit of defense mixed with a little bit of offense. At the very least, we will get a 5/5 green worm creature token before our opponents can really do anything about this. Next, we have a few aura enchantments with Unflinching Courage, Hydra's Growth, and Eldrazi Conscription. Unflinching Courage, costing 1, a green and a white, says the enchanted creature gets +2/+2, has trample, and has lifelink. We've got quite a few beaters in this deck, so being able to get through with that trample damage and then bring it back to ours with the lifelink just makes us a great include. Hydra's Growth, new from Theros Beyond Death, says whenever it enters the battlefield, we enchant a creature with it, of course, but it's going to get a +1/+1 counter on it, and at the beginning of our upkeep, we're going to double the number of +1/+1 counters on the enchanted creature. Thanks to Kenrith, we can be pumping counters onto creatures as we'd like, and we can then double them on our upkeep to make one massive creature. Eldrazi Conscription, one of the craziest enchantments ever printed. For 8 mana, we get this Eldrazi Aura Tribal enchantment that gives the enchanted creature +10/+10, trample, and Annihilator 2. If we can get Eldrazi Conscription onto the board attached to a flyer, there is a good chance we are going to be swinging out, hitting someone for half their life total, maybe just removing them from the game entirely. And to salt the wound a little bit more, they're going to have to sack 2 things to the Annihilator trigger. And then rounding out our offensive lineup, we do have 2 creature enchantments coming in with Bestow, and that is Kestia the Cultivator and Ghostblade Eidolon. Kestia the Cultivator, a good suspect for the commander of most enchantment-based decks, but we are just running her in the 99 as she is still a very helpful asset. For 1, a green, a white, and blue, we get a legendary enchantment creature that says the enchanted creature gets +4/+4, and whenever an enchanted creature or enchantment creature you control attacks, you get to draw a card. And then if we want, we can cast her for her Bestow cost, which is 3 green, white, blue, and that means if you cast this card for its Bestow cost, it's an aura spell and it's enchanted to a creature. It becomes a creature again if it's not attached to a creature. So for whatever reason, if that creature dies, gets exiled, gets bounced, Kestia will then become a creature on the battlefield. And Ghostblade Eidolon, for only 2 and a white, has double strike, and if we bestow him for 5 and a white, the enchanted creature is going to get +1/+1 and have double strike as well. Get an Eldrazi Conscription, equip it to Ghostblade Eidolon, and we are swinging in with an 11/11 double strike Trampler Annihilator 2. All these offensive spells are fantastic to get in for some damage, but we do need to make sure that we're keeping them protected and keeping our life total safe, and that's why we're running a bunch of defensive spells like Sphere of Safety and Island Sanctuary. Sphere of Safety may be one of the most powerful Pillow Fort items. 4 and a white, we get an enchantment that says creatures can't attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller pays X for each creature attacking, and X is equal to the number of enchantments we control. As you can imagine, our X value is going to be very high, meaning our opponents probably just won't be attacking us. And the Island Sanctuary, for 1 and a white, we get this enchantment that says, with errata text, it says if you would draw a card during your draw step, instead you may skip that draw. If you do, until your next turn, you can't be attacked except by creatures with flying and or island walk. With all of our abilities that are going to enable us to draw cards, if we need that added cushion, that added protection, we can skip our draw step to make it to where no opponents until our next turn without flying or island walk will not be able to attack us. a weird quirky enchantment that can come up huge in the right situations if things play out. Next up, we have Sterling Grove, Perplexing Chimera, and Sigarda, Host of Herons. All of these going to help keep our board state intact, keep our spells and enchantments protected. Sterling Grove, costing a green and a white, says all other enchantments you control can't be the target of spells or abilities. Now this is Shroud, and actually the errata text is other enchantments you control have Shroud. So this means that if we want to enchant any of our enchantment creatures, we won't be able to do that because we are not even allowed to target them ourselves, so do keep that in mind. But for one, we can also sacrifice Sterling Grove in case we need to get it off the board, search our library for an enchantment card, reveal it, shuffle our library, and then put that card on top. And then we have Perplexing Chimera. This enchantment creature for 4 and a blue says whenever your opponent casts a spell, you may exchange control of Perplexing Chimera and that spell. If you do, you may choose new targets for the spell. Perplexing Chimera is one of those cards that kind of grinds the game to a halt and gets everyone on edge until you hand it off, but even then, now your opponent has one and no one can actually cast their biggest and best spells. Sigarda, Host of Herons, is 2, a green, white, has flying, has hexproof. Spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause you to sacrifice permanents. This is going to help us get around those edict effects and things that are going to try to make us sacrifice all of our best enchantments. Sigarda is going to keep them safe. Then next up, we have 3 spells presenting us with Totem Armor in Bear Umbra, Octopus Umbra, and the Planeswalker Estrid the Mast. Bear Umbra, for 2 green, we can enchant a creature. That creature gets +2/+2 and has, whenever it attacks, we get to untap all of our lands. This is an amazing aura by itself with just that, but it also comes with Totem Armor. Totem Armor says if enchanted creature would be destroyed, instead we remove all the damage from it and destroy this aura instead. So not only is it a layer of protection, but it is also going to help us generate tons of mana. Octopus Umbra, similar, 3 blue enchanted creature. The enchanted creature has base power toughness 8/8 and has whenever this creature attacks, you may tap target creature with power 8 or less. So it's going to make our creature big, we're going to be able to tap things down, and it has Totem Armor to boot. And then Estrid the Mast, the Planeswalker, 1 and Bant, green, white, blue. For +2, we can untap each enchanted permanent we control. This is incredible because we could be untapping lands, creatures, everything. For -1, we can create a white aura enchantment token named Mask and attach it to another permanent that's any permanent. And that Mask enchantment is going to give that permanent Totem Armor, and then if we do get to the -7, we can put the top 7 cards of our library into our graveyard and then return all non-aura enchantment cards from our graveyard to the field, and then do the same for our aura cards. An incredibly strong Planeswalker and perfect in the 99. And then if we do run into trouble and we happen to lose a bunch of our enchantments, we have several ways that we can bring them back from the yard with Open the Vaults, Retether, and Dance of the Manse. Open the Vaults for 4 white, return all artifacts and enchantment cards from all graveyards to the battlefield under their owner's control. You will have to be careful with this because it will bring back lots of artifacts most likely to our opponent's side of the field. But we should see the biggest benefit with all of our enchantments coming onto the board at the same time. Retether for 3 and a white, we get to return all of our aura cards from our graveyard to play. And then Dance of the Manse, one of the new cards coming out of Throne of Eldraine. For X, white, blue, we get to return up to X target artifacts and or non-aura enchantment cards, each with converted mana cost X or less from our graveyard to the field. If X is greater than 6, those permanents are also 4/4 creatures in addition to their other types. So not only are we going to be able to get back a bunch of our enchantments, but there is a chance we could even have a full 4/4 army on board ready to go. Cast Dance of the Manse, return all of our enchantments to the field, use Kenrith to give them all trample and haste, and then we're off to the races. But along with all these amazing enchantments that we're going to be running, we do need to have a full supporting cast to really optimize them and get the most out of all their abilities. And that's why we're going to be running things like Verduran Enchantress, Mesa Enchantress, and Citizen Champion. All of these enchantresses are going to help us draw tons of cards whenever we either cast or our enchantments come into play. Citizen Champion is a 1/3 creature that says whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under your control, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it and draw a card. This enchantress, by the way, is absolutely insane and definitely outclasses some of the old enchantresses by not only getting bigger but also drawing us cards. Mesa Enchantress for 3 mana, we get this 0/2. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. And Verdurn Enchantress, 3 mana, whenever you play an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. Getting these on board early is very crucial to keeping our hand full and allowing us to continue to just play bomb after bomb and get the edge on our side. And then we have a couple creatures going to help us keep a strong board presence with all of our enchantments, with Archon of Sun's Grace and Nader Kraken. Archon of Sun's Grace, a flying lifelink Archon, says Pegasus creatures you control have lifelink. And then whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield under our control, we get to create a 2/2 white Pegasus creature token with flying. Not only is this a strong flying body, but is also going to generate tokens and give us lots of life gain. In Nader Kraken, for 1 and a blue, we get this Kraken creature that says whenever you draw a card, you may pay 1. If you do, you put a +1 counter on Nader Kraken and create a 1/1 blue tentacle creature token. As you can imagine, this deck does have a lot of card draw in it, and if we have Divine Visitation out and we are creating a bunch of 1/1s, they're going to in turn be 4/4 angels for only 1 mana. With the Enchantresses on board and Archon of Sun's Grace or Nader Kraken in play, we're going to be generating lots of advantage on the board and in card draw. And then to ensure that we have the right enchantments and auras in our hand when we need them, we'll also be running Idyllic Tutor and Heliod's Pilgrim. You will notice a lot of these cards are coming from Theros Beyond Death, so they are going to be at the lowest price they may be in a long time. Idyllic Tutor for only 2 and a white, we get to search our library for any enchantment card, reveal it, and put it directly into our hand. And Heliod's Pilgrim for 2 and a white, whenever it enters the battlefield, we can search for any aura card, reveal it, and put it directly into our hand. Whatever the situation may be on the board, these 2 cards are going to help us find the answer to solve it. And then a combo I actually previewed before in an earlier video, also done on Kenrith the Return King, Happily Ever After and Plane-Wide Celebration. Happily Ever After is an enchantment costing 2 and a white, and it says whenever it enters the battlefield, each player is going to gain 5 life and draw a card. At the beginning of our upkeep, if there are 5 colors among permanents you control, there are 6 or more card types among permanents and or cards in your graveyard, and your life total is greater than or equal to your starting, so 40, then you will win the game on the spot. A few things to talk about real quick before we move on to Plane-Wide Celebration. Kenrith does not count as all colors. His color identity may be 5 for Commander, but he is only a white card for the purpose of Happily Ever After and will not help us meet that win condition. So in order to make it happen, we will be running Plane-Wide Celebration, which says for 5 and 2 green, we get to choose 4, and we can choose the same mode if we want more than once. We either create a 2/2 citizen creature token that's all colors, there's our win condition for Happily Ever After, or we can return a target permanent card from our graveyard to our hand, or we can proliferate, or we can gain 4 life. If for some reason we have lost Happily Ever After, well, Plane-Wide Celebration is going to enable us to get it back, gain life to get over that 40 life threshold, and give us the creature we need to help us win the game on our upkeep. This is a cheeky little combo, and if you can get it to go off, it is crazy, but do know that the moment Happily Ever After comes down, you will have a target on your back because your opponents will know something is up. That's why you just try to bluff them and say that you need the card draw and you need the life gain, and you are trying to be nice and let everyone be a part of it. But if we can't get that win with the Plane-Wide Celebration Happily Ever After combo, we do have one more new combo that is for sure going to end the game, and that is with Siona, Captain of Pyleas, and Shielded by Faith, and in conjunction with Daxos to help us gain a little bit of life. Siona, Captain of Pyleas, for 1, a green and a white, says whenever Captain of Pyleas enters the battlefield, look at the top 7 cards of our library. We can reveal an aura card from among them and put it into our hand, put the rest on the bottom of our library. And whenever an aura you control becomes attached to a creature you control, create a 1/1 human soldier creature token. Now, in conjunction with Shielded by Faith, which says, enchanted creature has indestructible, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield, you may attach Shielded by Faith to that creature. This is going to generate infinite 1/1 white human soldier creature tokens. When Shielded by Faith gets attached to a token, it generates a new one thanks to Siona, which we then move Shielded by Faith to, generating a new token so on and so forth. We can repeat this process until we have a humongous board state, and if we do have Kenrith on board, we can give them all haste for only 1 red mana and win the game on the spot. But maybe we don't have a way to give them haste, but we do have Daxos at our side. Whenever another creature you control enters the battlefield or dies, you gain a life. Creating infinite 1/1 human soldier creature tokens means we are going to have infinite life for the rest of the game, and we can then play as we like. Since Siona was previewed, this combo was immediately recognized and is definitely going to be known around the table. So if you do play Siona, be ready to have an answer in case they try to deal with her when she comes down. But now that we've seen most of the ins and outs of this deck, let's take a look at what else we got going on inside the 99. For removal and control in this deck, we're running about 9 to 10 different spells, good targeted removal, good board clears if we need to, card draw and advantage. We've got a ton of card draw thanks to all the enchantresses, about 12 spells. Ramp and control, we're in green, you know we're going to be ramping hard. We've got about 12 to 14 spells. And for the power level of this deck, I put it at right about a 6. It is a very focused deck, set to cast lots of enchantments, do a lot of damage, create tokens, draw tons of cards, but it's not going to win on turn 3, 4, or 5. We have to get set up, get prepared, and then we can take all of our opponents down. And we do have a few ways to make that happen. Number 1, we can enchant a lot of our creatures with our big auras, make some big beaters, and swing out for mega combat damage. Or we can generate lots of tokens, overwhelm the board, and swing in with a wide army. And if that doesn't get the job done, we can absolutely combo off with something like Happily Ever After or Siona, Captain of the Pyleas. A few budget alternatives you might consider if you have them or you're just looking to cut back on some costs: Sovereign of Lost Alara, Silent Sentinel, and Nylea's Colossus. Sovereign gonna allow us to get an aura from our deck straight onto the battlefield whenever a creature attacks alone. Silent Sentinel, whenever it attacks, you can return an enchantment from the graveyard to the battlefield. And Nylea's Colossus, whenever it comes down or another enchantment comes down, we're going to double the target creature's power and toughness until the end of turn. All of these would be great additions and would fit very well into this deck. And then if you want to kick this deck up another notch, we have a few upgrades in Zur the Enchanter, Mirari's Wake, and Karametra, God of Harvests. Zur the Enchanter is important to note that it does have black in its mana cost, but again, we have tons of ways to generate that additional mana. But Zur, whenever he attacks, we can search our library for any enchantment card with CMC 3 or less and put it straight onto the battlefield. Mirari's Wake is an enchantment / lord effect, going to give all of our creatures +1/+1, and whenever we tap a land for mana, we get to add an additional mana to our mana pool. And then Karametra, God of Harvest, insane ramp. As long as our devotion to green and white is less than 7, it's not a creature, and whenever we cast a creature spell, we can search our library for a forest or plains card and put it straight onto the battlefield tapped. If you're looking to juice things up, all of these would be great additions to the deck. But hey, that is going to wrap up this enchanted Kenrith King deck. This deck is so sweet. I love the idea of playing a Bant deck in a 5-color shell. Kenrith enables so many great advantages, being able to give haste, give trample, recur our creatures, and we can do that all without sacrificing our mana base. But let me know what cards I missed. What enchantments would you add? Maybe slide in a few more combos. Let me know down in the comments section below what you think. But if you did enjoy this deck tech, hey, make sure you hit that like button and maybe share it around some social media or share it with a friend. Thanks so much for everyone who continues to come back and check out all of our deck techs. A new deck tech will go live here every Friday. If you're new and you want to know when our next video goes live, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on that bell for notifications. If you're coming back, checking us out again, thanks so much. Always appreciate you guys and the great feedback I receive. If you want to get more involved, you can go follow us on Twitter at EDH Tactics. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and we'll see you for the next one.